Anyway, Brendan, yes, noted. We should see if we can do that. What I heard around the GCR stuff was that they can give us a new name that points to an arbitrary other name, but that it was more difficult to take a name and move it. Maybe as a one-off they can do it. The other advantage of actually doing,
or I mean, you could do the opposite, right? I mean, it would result in a brief outage, but you could move everything, delete the old thing, and then redirect the old thing to the new thing.
yes, right. I think that's what Ben was mostly saying.
Yeah, we can do something like that with GCS. It's just racy.
Yeah, well, it's not racy. It's a definite visible outage. Like we can do it, we can schedule it for midnight or something, but there's going to be a few minutes or where it doesn't exist.
Right. I meant the sync part is because we also have things that are continuously publishing to it.
Oh yeah, we'll have to shut the door on that or something. So this is why it's not at the top of the list. The other thing that's nice about doing the sort of facade pattern that they gave us with GCR is that it auto regionalizes. So if we have these scripts that distribute things to various regions, if we care about it for this GCS stuff, we might care about it for releases. We might not care about it for test stuff, which means that users in Asia get the Asia mirror, et cetera. Which actually resulted in a big drop in the graph of GCR's cost because suddenly we were serving from local mirrors instead of US. Okay. So logistically, how do we want to refer to this work? Like we should have an umbrella name for the effort, the team. We probably need a Google group so that I can add it to IAM and stuff for the clusters.
Actually, one note. So Tima can also cover the administrator work of the GCP stuff, just to be a backup person for you. So I'm currently an org admin as well.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, we can. I have never done this with a GCP project that wasn't full of Googlers. So we should figure out, do we want to just invite one big Google group that we control access to there, or do we want to invite individually?
We've always done a combination, have a few people that are invited individually as a fallback, and then also invite a group. And most people are via the group, but someone who is like an admin is direct.
We currently have two individuals. We actually have three. So it's Tim, myself, and Taylor from CNCF. Taylor is just managing the budget questions, so she's not related to the technical discussions. We have Tim and myself, and we can add the entire team of individuals that we have here at this call, all the people who are going to be involved into the process. Seems reasonable from me.
I'd recommend using groups as much as possible, just because otherwise, like, you end up with an ever-growing list of admins that's very difficult to read.
I agree.
Right.
I think just as policy, we should endeavor to have a list of people who have effectively like project level ownership over all projects, but keep that list small, and then everybody else be added to projects with the smallest access control that we can figure out. Acknowledging that not every product has fine-grained ACLs, but many do now.
Another possibility, I don't know again, but like we use just-in-time access for most production access. So that's even better because then it's not standing access.
I have not set that up.
That might not be possible. Actually, that might not be possible in Google. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I know we have some capabilities around that. I've never used it, but I can take a look at that too. So as a group, which should we establish? Well, let's talk about admin access. Right now, there's a small list of people who have org admin, which means you can create new projects. That list probably can't be very large. How do we want to establish who can be in that list and who's willing to be in that list? Because it will mean being able to do things for other people, like create projects.
I'm on the list, so I'm happy to do it. But we definitely need not a single person who will cover that.
I would say we need a bus factor of 3 to 4.
Yeah, and preferably someone from the Pacific time zone, as most of you are based there.
I'm happy to say
I can
that.
give it a shot. Yeah.
I could throw my name in there as well if you need another non-Googler. Like, I think as like we're eventually going to need some governance around this. Like, who gets involved? Who gets those permissions? What hoops do you need to jump through? Eventually, we're going to need to establish that, whether it's a SIG working group or something else. But we can start with a small team now and then establish the governance later when we know what we're governing.
I second it.
Agree with that. We do need to have, or steering needs to have the conversation about how they want to model this.
Yeah, that's fine. But another thing that I was talking just before you guys joined was we are missing a lot of people. We are missing people from Heptio who volunteered on Twitter, for example. People from Red Hat who have all traditionally helped out with a lot of the infra work. So we are missing people too. So if we pick our names right now, I'm a little bit worried that we don't have all hands.
So I think what we really need to set up is, like, we can't have this be a huge list, or in the global scope.
Yeah.
What we should do is consider a small group, like maybe this group, as the sort of core transition team who has access to all the transitional projects. And as we set up each property and we say, like, DNS is now established, who wants to help be a DNS admin? We'll get the DNS admin group permission and be able to create new DNS records, and we'll have to write a doc or something that says what is allowed and what are the policies around that, and that will be very sort of verticalized and small. Does that make sense?
I agree with Tim. Yep. We shouldn't have
I'd agree with that as well.
Yeah, we shouldn't have the unlimited list of people who have access to everything. My assumption that we currently have the good group of people who all agreed on bootstrapping, and all these people are on the current call. So we definitely may have another individuals from other teams and other companies who will help us with the efforts, because we can skip other volunteers, and definitely their help will be absolutely welcome. But I'm not sure that we should have a really big list of people who can have an access to everything. The same as we did with GitHub.
Totally agree with you on that, Ihor. It's just that we need to make sure that we have enough people who will respond to the things that need to be fixed or approved or set up or configured. That needs to be done by hand, right? But then the other thing here is we need some Googlers who know how the GC stuff works, and it can't be just people who are from the outside as well. So I see that we are missing Robert Bailey from the call.
Although he chatted on the thread that said that he felt like he wasn't needed. So
okay, good. Okay, yeah. So I'm happy to I like rolling with who we have here on the call, and then figuring out let steering committee figure out some of the stuff and then go on. Let's pick a name, and then. Is the name okay that's suggested there? There's one from Aaron, one from Chris.
K8s Infra team sounds great.
Where are the names?
On the chat.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Agree. Yep.
Does somebody want to go off and create a Google group?
I can do it.
Okay. So it says team, so it's not a SIG or a working group. So we know it's
the team is just the mailing list. Coincidentally, there are 10 people listed, at least in the attendees. If there's anybody on the call who's not in the attendee list, please make sure you're added at the bottom of the linked document. But there's 10 of us. We consider that maybe the inaugural leadership group of this effort. And as more people get added, we will figure out sort of which efforts they're actually interested in helping administer. Non-exclusive.
Yeah.
So I just want to throw out there on that. We've been planning on this for a while, hoping that the credits would be finished and out. Amin and I, at least this quarter, for sure, have time allocated specifically to moving all of this from the Google side. And I think we will continue this forward as long as we need to do this as well.
Awesome. I'm happy to as somebody who has the keys to sort of all the properties today, I'm happy to coordinate how those things happen. I want to be careful that we don't spin up too many efforts in parallel. There's a lot of explorations that I need to figure out of just stuff that I've never done with GCP, which sounds weird, but there it is.
So then the next question I had is, when do we go public with the Google group, and is it an open Google group?
I think it should be open.
Yeah.
I think the discussion should be open. If we need to create a private group, we can, but I hope that we don't need to.
Yeah.
Nobody should be posting passwords there anyway.
Correct. We'll need a Slack channel which is protected.
Sure. You can. So are we taking action items? Somebody create the group. Somebody ping Paris to create us a Slack.
I can do everything here on the administrative side. My suggestion here is to create 2 Google groups. One is public, that will be our default one. But in some case, when we have to have some private conversations, we will still have the private group.
We can also use the private group for IAM.
Sure. I agree that we will need to use groups for IAM. I would like to say we should not be having private conversations unless we can really justify it. So let's create a private group when we need it.
I would add, we probably will for at least some aspects at some point, particularly around the Kubernetes security testing, at least.
I would also say, imagine there's a compromise, right?
Yeah.
Presumably we don't want that on the public list.
Okay.
I will happily kick off of the private group anything that sounds like it shouldn't be there. I already do that for steering.
Okay. All right. So then I'm fine with that. That's fine. And let's assume the K8s Infra as a prefix, and maybe go squat on a bunch of reasonable Google groups.
Should we do this, this is just another thought before we go and push the buttons and set things up. Should we do this in public Google groups, or should we do this on the K8s.io Google groups, like the G Suite?
Yeah, that's a question that steering has been wrestling with. We didn't want to make the Kubernetes.io G Suite be a really dynamic thing. We didn't want it to become a status thing, or I have access to the G Suite groups, but it actually sort of makes sense. And there's a lot of things you can do there that you can't do on public Google groups. Brendan, what do you think, since you're on steering and I'm not anymore? Aaron?
I kind of feel like, given that we're talking about potentially even hiring employees, it kind of starts feeling like maybe it should be part of the G Suite. I mean, this feels like plumbing, I guess. I feel like there's no harm and I don't think anybody's going to have any status associated with it. But Aaron might have to.
No, I don't know. Is Kubernetes.io, the suite, already funded as part of this endeavor, or is that a completely separate thing?
The suite is funded separately. But groups don't cost money. Accounts do, but groups don't. So we can create as many groups as we want and add people to those groups, and it shouldn't cost anything. And I think that, it seems like a reasonable way to administer it. The gotcha is there's a very small number of people who have access to that G Suite, and we now are putting another group of people in the way of being able to do progress.
Yes.
But can't you set somebody else as the admin of the group? You don't have to be part of the G Suite to be an admin of the group.
Sure, but somebody has, if we need a new group, if we're spinning off a new effort, then somebody I think you're one of those holders, or there's a small group of just 3, right? They have to go off and do it.
I would argue probably stick to public Google groups for now, in the interest of debottlenecking. And if it turns out, as we look to more formalize this or realize we do need some tighter access controls that are not available as a result of the public groups, then we can consider doing it for the Kubernetes.io Google groups. But I agree strongly with you about the whole status thing. I'd really rather avoid that if at all possible. And if we can't, like, if we're not willing to plunk down money for pretty much anybody to join the Kubernetes.io Google groups, then I don't think we should.
Well, just to,
it's not. It doesn't cost. It doesn't cost money, and I don't think we should give out like K8s.io email addresses. We definitely shouldn't give out like K8s.io accounts. That seems wrong.
Agree. We're not going to have Aaron at Kubernetes.io.
Right.
But we might have K8s Infra at Kubernetes.io.
Well, at least Chris should have one. Just kidding. So the other one is, so we'll set up the infrastructure stuff, the Slack channel, Google Groups, and then we can post this to public on Monday, Tuesday.
Okay.
Is there anything in the Google Doc that you don't want to be public?
I don't think so.
Hope not. Yeah.
So Ihor, you're taking all those AIs?
I'm taking them.
Okay.
Google Group is already ready. You can see the link in a Zoom chat.
Yeah, for the last item there, let's just grab anything that starts with K8s Infra that seems reasonably useful, and we'll go from there. And I guess I agree with Aaron. If we start with public, we can always move it private later, although the transition is hard because you can't add a group to a group through the public groups, but you can through private groups. Whatever, we'll deal with it when we get there. In terms of officialness, we will need to have the conversation with steering. Has there been any conversation there yet?
No, there has not been. We've had some chatter on the private mailing list since we couldn't discuss this while it was embargoed publicly. We had a little bit of a chat before you showed up, and I think next steering committee meeting, I'll make sure it's front and center as a thing to address. And I have an action item to make sure we're clarifying the whole working group thing anyway.
Okay.
When we go to the steering committee, do you need like a write-up that we should go with?
I think we should let Aaron be the bridge for now. Get a recommendation from steering committee as to what structure they would like to use for this. Since this is a little bit different than anything in the past. And once they have that structure, then we can draft the charter or the mission or whatever is appropriate for the structure they choose.
I'm sort of looking at the what as a rough swag at the scope of this group, and then the how and come up with things. I would probably try to, rationalize against the same sort of policies that we have for the GitHub administration team. Because I think that was a pretty good example of what's the level of formalism that we require for policies and processes. And however that shakes out, we'll see. But I think we're all, like Brandon and I both are in strong agreement. Like, we don't want that to necessarily get in the way of real, actual productive work happening.
Yeah.
As long as and I think Christoph did a good job of putting that point out there. It's like, as long as we all agree that there does need to be some form of formalized governance once we figure out what it is we are governing, and that this all may be temporary and be iterated upon, that's great. That's fine.
Yeah. The thing I want to avoid is that 3 months from now, we still haven't set up something and some new person decides they want to volunteer and we don't have a way to decide whether they're allowed to or not, or whether we can give them access or not, or what access we can give them. And
that would be a great example. Like, that would be a great example of something I think we'll want from you to define, like, how are you going to vet new people?
Yes, except I don't want to be I don't think I'm the only voice in that. I mean, I feel like we understand it, but we have to write it down.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know, Brendan, do you have anything to add there? Like, my goal would be to have a decision on this by the next meeting, or as a result of the next meeting.
Yeah, I think so. It doesn't seem, I mean, I don't know. The committee has an infinite ability to bike shed, but we can try and drive.
We have to figure out which bike shed to paint, and then
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah, I neglected.
Maybe actually, no, generally it's create a new bike shed. It's a new type of bike shed.
This is a shed for 3-wheeled bikes.
Yeah. I think actually that might be our, no, it's not quite our lame duck session. Is it? I don't know. I have to look at the dates.
We're getting close.
Yeah.
Okay, so looking back at the doc, name and effort, list of priorities. We'll need to come up with a naming and structure convention for GCP projects. I'll take the action to go and play a little bit and just to see sort of with the first few items on our list what the right level of access control would be with respect to Google Groups. I haven't actually played with groups in IAM very much, so I can play with that a little bit. Interesting challenge I just found is it detects that I'm coming from Google, and so it offers me Google things, which I'm going to try to figure out how to defeat so that I can access this project as a non-Googler. The other thing is billing accounts. I will take a look. I'll take the action item to take a look at what reports we can set up with billing accounts and if we can get the right granularity that we want with a single account or if we need to actually create derivative accounts.
I'm also happy to, once Tim gets something set up, I'm happy to drive the DNS work forward so we actually get something tangibly created.
If you're writing that program, Brendan, if you have the other direction, then I can.
It's done.
Okay, so I can point it at the existing DNS, have it dump the YAML, and then we can sort of look at it, scrub it, decide if it's what we want, and then like use this as a proof of concept. We can get either you or the group added to the first project, and we can import it and see if it all came out the way we want it to.
Okay, yeah, I just realized, of course, I don't have the printout for the dump. I have the YAML to cloud, but I don't have the cloud to YAML part. So I'll hack that together.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that'll be easier.
Sorry, do we have a good place for storing these things? I mean, so like, for example, the testing, we just kind of have a directory and test info we're moving all the config to, but what about like the DNS config and
That's a great question. Should we create a new org or should we create a repo that has a bunch of subdirectories? Probably not a repo.
Could we use case.io/case.io for this?
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
Reasonable place. We already have the website there.
I was also going to suggest possibly related to org repo. It's kind of a similar thing where we're doing administration via YAML. Maybe one for the infra and one for the org.
You mind sticking with Kates.io for now until the steering committee figures out what it wants to do? Okay.
I think Kates.io makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
One other tangential question I had, just want to make sure we do have two-factor required on these projects, or this org would be a really good idea. I think it's something you can require with GCP. I was looking up, so I think as long as we enable that on whatever org, the CNCF org, or whatever, that'd be great.
I think it's already enabled on Kubernetes org. I remember the hassle Brian went through to turn it on a year and a half ago. Okay, so we're going to use GitHub Kubernetes Kates.io, or yeah, that's the right link. GitHub Kubernetes Kates.io. We'll make subdirectories under there. So Brendan, if you want a home for your YAML importer, that could be a home for it. Unless you want to stick it in a separate repo and just use it from there. Like, okay, fair question. Is the GitHub Kubernetes Kates.io repo for the code and the tools, or is it only for the configs?
Configs.
I recommend configs only.
Yes.
I agree with that.
I agree. As soon as I had said you can stick the code there, I remember. So.
We are in a huge effort to fix that in test infra, and it's taking way too much time. We should avoid doing that, or combining them.
Brendan, stick your YAML converter anywhere you like. If you want to create an org, a repo under Kubernetes, we can probably justify that. If you want to stick it under Brendan D. Burns,
it's already under my personal repo, so I'll just leave it there until somebody complains.
Yeah.
All right, it's fine with me. Okay, and you put a link in here somewhere, right? Yeah.
Yeah, there is a link at the top, and there's a link in the comments too.
Cool. I will, Brendan, you ping me when you feel like you've got the importer ready, and I'll take a look and see if I can run it against our existing repos.
Yeah, I'm about to go on vacation, but
it's end of summer. Like, no surprise. You there? Did you drop off? I lost the Brendan.
The Brendan is muted.
Who's off next week, and when can we have the meeting after that? Sorry.
Was there? I'm literally like packing the top of my car, so I was on mute with my phone in my pocket, struggling with heavy things.
Okay.
So
Uh,
I don't think there wasn't anything else for me though, right? Was there?
No, you know what? In fact, if you're out, if I can find some free time, I'll take a look at your tool. In the meantime, maybe I'll PR you the import direction or something.
Feel free. It'll be really easy. The load from cloud is already there. It's just the dumping. It's literally you're going to be like, you need to add a flag and a little bit of code to dump to YAML. But like the actual grabbing it from the cloud is already present.
All right. So I can take a look at that. I'm out like one day next week, just for the long weekend. Like there's Monday off, and I think I'm taking Tuesday also. I have to ask my wife if I'm taking the day off, but I think I am.
So we meet 2 weeks from now, and then we'll do everything else on Slack next week.
Okay, so 2 weeks from now, the goal is to have
the DNS ready,
the DNS tool complete, and at least a proposal around billing and project structure.
Right.
And the steering committee will have talked about how we want this to be formally represented. We'll hopefully have some kind of decision for you.
And feel free to slowly share the doc with other people who might be interested.
Absolutely. And anybody who comes up with more ideas of things that need to be covered here, or wants to flesh out more details of how to make these transitions, like Ben and Jeff, you probably have thoughts around how to make the flop of the testing infrastructure. You either link to a doc or start throwing notes in here somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we need to write a new doc, but.
Yeah. And as I'm thinking about the ordering that we talked about here, we can do DNS manually, but eventually we'll want to have this tool, and the tool probably wants to run in a kube cluster, so we'll pretty quickly end up in the second category. Which is fine, actually. I think that's the right way to go, because that unblocks 15 different efforts that want to run in the kube cluster.
Right. Shyam, Amit, did you have anything? You've been pretty quiet.
Yeah, so I was basically here like to see if there's something that might be needed from the scalability side, because there's a bunch of different stuff that besides just the tests themselves, there's like some infrastructure there as well. But I'm happy to help with something else as well if there's some action.
The biggest thing you can do would be to start enumerating the details of, like, if we were to take on the scale testing stuff, tomorrow, what would we need to do?
Sure. Yeah. Yes. I think that makes sense. I'll try to add that stuff to the document then.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, things don't have to wait, just because we are on a lower priority.
Right. To put it very concretely, like, I knew the GCR stuff would be a big deal to get the indirector up and to get hundreds of pull requests against all the different repos changed. So I started that months ago, and it's still not done. There's still some that haven't merged those PRs or have regressed in some way or another. So I'll have to do another pass. So if the scale testing and the CI testing requires sort of pre-factoring of repos, it's good to get those things in flight now.
Yeah. I agree with that, yes.
Yeah, Amit, how about you?
Yeah, so as Ben mentioned, Ben and I already have some time allocated for doing this. So yeah, we'll probably start with adding a new doc to how we plan to do things.
Sounds good. And whose birthday is it next week? Tim?
It is my birthday next week.
Okay, happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Yeah.
We should all sing.
Please don't.
You first.
So Brendan, have a safe journey. Anything else?
I think we're good. Thank you.
Okay.
My final question, my final housekeeping question is about the Google group. I just figured out that everybody has to request me as an owner to join the Google group. I suppose we have to change that to, like, everybody can join the group, right?
Or at least add me as a owner till if you can't figure out.
Yes, that was the second question. Who is the secondary owner? Not to make me the single point of failure.
I think making Dims the owner sounds great. Ihor, can you just direct add the 10 of us for now, or do we all need to go and click on a link?
Yeah, I applied already.
Yeah. I will send the mail. I will send invites to you, but I need some of the mail addresses for those people whom I don't know.
All right, everybody on the call, go add your email after the your name in the attendee list.
Yes, and Slack IDs, because I don't know the Slack ID for Amwad and Shyam, if I correctly pronounce the name. Because we have 8 people in Slack channel, but we have 10 participants here.
Actually, can everybody add also what time zone you're in?
Usually.
I'm sure some of you have gotten this on Twitter or whatever the other awesome social media live streaming things are, but I just wanted to really thank you so much for all of the pushing and effort that has gone forward to get us this far. I know there are some outside who think, oh, great, the switch has been flipped and it's all done. And this is the group of people who recognize that, yeah, we're talking on the order of months worth of work. So I just wanted to thank you all for getting us this far and for getting ready for continuing the journey.
Huge +1. Thank you for volunteering. This is what makes this stuff work.
Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
And
How's it going?